Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we call tonight's meeting to order, we're going to invite Mr. David Slatter from Grace First Presbyterian Church to come forward to lead us in the invocation. Welcome back and thank you for being here, sir.
Sorry I didn't get
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Jeans, so.
Well, we appreciate you here.
There's one guy back there that doesn't have them on either, so we're
Thanks for being here.
Let us pray. God, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for the rain. We thank you for cool temperatures. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to be outside, to enjoy your creation. God, we come together this evening to just ask for blessings upon these people who lead our community. Lord, help us to have eyes open to all the events that are going on in the world, that we would understand what is going on in the world and how can we make a change here in our corner of the world for your people. So God, we just ask for a wonderful meeting. We ask that you give blessings to all those who are leading the community. Pray that you be with all of our frontline workers, the EMTs, the firefighters, police department, Lord. We just ask that you continue to watch over them. And we ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again for being here, sir. All righty. This time we'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum present tonight, Council. Thank you for that. Item 3 on the agenda is pledges of allegiance to the United States and Texas flags. Councilman Cleveland, do you mind?
Certainly. If you would stand and join me for the pledge of the U.S. and Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you for that, sir. Item 4 is items of community interest. Mr. Hotop.
The only 2 items we'll be talking about here in just a second about rodeo and Spark in the Park, so I believe we have some guests here to talk about that.
Council, anything from council on that?
Sure.
Trying to get signed in here. Stand by. I'll say that again for the record. I'm unable to get logged in, Ms. Peacock, so I will vote and motion verbally. Council, is that okay with y'all? Okay. We're going to carry on. Item 5 on the agenda, presentations and proclamations. 5A is an update regarding Parker County Frontier Days Rodeo and Parade. Mr. Hotop.
So we have a couple of guests here tonight, Mr. Larry Walden and Joe Harris from the Park County Sheriff's Posse, so we're going to invite them forward to tell them about the exciting activities. We're throwing a little bit of a curveball this year with COVID and when the rodeo was normally scheduled, but these gentlemen were able to come up with some alternate dates, so they're here to tell us about the event.
Gentlemen, please come forward. And if you'll know, we kind of put on our best Western duds out of appreciation to y'all and excitement for the upcoming week.
We noticed, we appreciate that. We appreciate being here, Mayor. I'm Larry Walden. I'm here to talk about one portion of what we're going to have, and I'll tell you the history of it just very quickly. We weren't going to have a stock show, and we weren't going to have a rodeo. Representative Phil King intervened, put me in touch with Mike Toomey, the head of the governor's task force. He said, we don't want to cancel those events. We know it's important to your community. And he said, I want y'all to know that I'm the one that was responsible. Mike Toomey is the one who's responsible for having the rodeo here. So we have already had the stock show at the normal time. We delayed the rodeo. So our normal time is the first full week in June. This year, it's going to be the first full week in July because that fit with what we were doing. So we're clear to have a rodeo in Parker County. It's the 74th annual. The part that I want to talk to you about is what's going to take place on July the 4th. We've got actually 3 events. Last year, Mayor Paschal participated in the entire
Yes, I did.
first annual
I've almost recovered from that.
cattle drive. And so we drove cattle from Millsap, Texas to the Sheriff's Posse grounds. Paul was there, rode a horse the whole way.
Hold your
We're
applause,
accepting
please.
volunteers and commitments from anybody in the audience or on the council for this year's too. So, but we appreciate your support for our activity.
Great experience.
I want to go about talking about the activities on that Saturday, July the 4th. It's going to start with breakfast in Heritage Park at the Log Cabins in Millsap, Texas. Free breakfast, and everybody is invited. 6:15 is the kickoff of that. They'll have breakfast until they run out of food, but that's put on by the Millsap Historical Society, and literally everybody is invited. They will have more food there than any of us could all consume, so please come if you want to see what's going on. The trail drive, cattle drive, will start at 8 o'clock from downtown Millsap. We come up Old Millsap Road. We take a break after about 4 miles. We're going to pick up the cattle there because we found out last year the cattle got tired on the way to town, so we're going to drive them about 6 miles. We'll move up Greenwood Road then. We'll arrive at Parker County Sheriff's Posse about noon. We have barbecue lunch. Y'all are all invited. Come and eat with us, okay? Fast forward until 5:30 on the evening of July the 4th, and we're going to have our rodeo parade at 5:30 starting at the 9th grade center, the regular parade route up and around the courthouse, back down Waco, with one exception. This time, with the permission of everybody involved, we're going to drive cattle to begin the parade. And so we're going to bring the cattle to town, and if you want to take pictures, that's a good picture you're going to be able to get. We hope to have TV coverage. We hope to have lots of coverage because we want to make this a really big event for the city of Weatherford and for Parker County. And we're partners with you guys, and we really appreciate everything that you folks do to make those events possible for us. So we're going to drive cattle. They will lead the parade. They'll go around the courthouse. We'll drive them up North Main, pin them there, and haul them back. But it's going to be a little bit different parade. Everybody is invited to participate in the parade. Everybody is invited to be a spectator, come take pictures. It's going to be a big event, and this is the first annual parade with cattle in it.
Sounds great.
Mayor.
Looking forward to it.
After that, at 8 o'clock, we have a street dance down on the northwest quadrant of the square. From there till midnight, Rowdy Decker's band, we had it last year. It was a great event. And we did these events in conjunction with city manager and the mayor so that we would not step on each other's toes. And we feel comfortable that we will have 2 events that night, Spark in the Park and our activities at the same time, and not split the crowd. So we're excited. We're excited because people are ready to go do something, and we know that this is going to be a great event and generate lots of income for the city of Weatherford and for Parker County. So thank you very much. Joe's not just here. He's just not just another cute face. He's here to talk about the 74th annual Parker County Frontier Days Rodeo.
Let's hear about it. Thank you, Joe, for being here. Commissioner Walden, thank you.
We appreciate very much the cooperation and the partnership that we have with the city of Weatherford, as Larry's already expressed. And it's very important and vital to Parker County, to the city of Weatherford, for us to all be on the same trail together, and so we appreciate y'all very much. After the parade and the street dance on Saturday night, the following Tuesday, we'll start off at 8 o'clock that morning with what we call timed event slack. We don't know our numbers yet on how many is going to be in the rodeo, but we understand it's going to be huge this year as far as participants. So on Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, we'll start with slack for the timed events. That is a free for anybody that wants to come and watch. There's no charge for that, and it will go until we're finished or until we have to start that night with the extreme bull riding event. We added that event in 2016. It's similar to what a lot of people would refer to as the PBR, but this is the PRCA Extreme Bulls. That's all it is on Tuesday night, is bull riding. So that'll kick off at 7:30, and so we'll have that Tuesday night. Wednesday, we'll have our first night of the PRCA Rodeo with all the events, from bull riding to horse saddle bronc, bareback, barrel racing, steer wrestling, team roping, tie-down roping. All of those events will be started on Wednesday night. On Thursday morning, we'll have a steer roping starting at 7 o'clock. Again, that event there is free if anybody wants to come and watch and participate in that. Thursday night, we will have our second rodeo performance. That's the night we have the Tough Enough to Wear Pink night. The posse will change their white shirts to pink shirts, and we invite everybody to participate in that Tough Enough to Wear Pink. And that night, a portion of our gate take will go to local cancer funding that we participate in. We've done that for many years. We're honored to be able to do that, and it's with the participation of everybody that comes and supports. So then on Friday morning, we don't have anything on Friday morning, but Friday night we will have the third night of the rodeo, and then Saturday morning we'll have the barrel racing slack event. And we understand right now there may be 150 barrel racers showing up. So our parking lots are going to be full. There's going to be lots of people participating. And then Saturday evening we will have our fourth and final night of the rodeo. And we expect it to be a huge rodeo. I will tell you right now that our plans are on Friday night and Saturday night to have Dana Bowman parachute into the arena. If you've never seen Dana parachute in, it is an event to see. So a lot of times they'll drop him off a mile or two down the way depending on the wind, and here he comes and drops into that arena out there right on spot. So we look forward to a great rodeo. We look forward to a full house, and so we're excited about it, and we invite everybody to come and be with us.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
This is a community event. Don't leave out the Lions Club, the concession stand. When you look at the amount of work that it takes to put on an event like this, our concessions are a big part of that. I know a lot of y'all are members and a lot of y'all participate, and we appreciate it because we know how much work is involved in that from doing it in other times of the year. So it's not just an event for the Sheriff's Posse. One other thing that I always like to talk about when we're here, what do you do with the money you generate? Where does it go? We can give you a list of the charities that we give to. I was challenged about that, and I said, we need to make a list of that. So Joe and I sat down, and we came up with a list of $50,000 before we got started. So we are a community organization. Our purpose is to preserve the Western heritage of our neighbors, our Parker County residents. That's why we're there. But in addition to that, our responsibility is to give to the charities that need us. So we do that. So thank y'all for allowing us to be here, Mayor, council members. Thank y'all very much. If anybody needs any information, tickets are at the Chamber of Commerce. You can buy them online. Go on our website. We'll have music every night after the rodeo. And if you haven't been in a long time, it's different. It's a lot better. So come. If you need tickets, see us. We'll fix you up. We want people to be there. We want people to know what we do. And we want everybody in Parker County to come to our rodeo.
Well, the Parker County Sheriff's Posse is one of the many things that makes Weatherford and Parker County special, and we appreciate the heritage and the hospitality that your group offers. And I think the best thing we can do for y'all is on 3, give them a big yee-haw. 1, 2, 3. Yee-haw! Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
We'll see you.
Thank you, everybody.
Here, guys.
And I'm not riding again this year. That was fun, though, last year. It was.
We got you in Bull Reserve down
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
A little barrel racing maybe for the May?
We're all behind you, Paul.
yeah, way behind. Several-month recovery. No, it was a great experience. 5B on the agenda, update regarding the 2020 Spark in the Park, the other big event that evening. Shannon Goodman, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Shannon Goodman, Director for Parks, Recreation, and Special Events. So it's our 5th year of Spark in the Park. We're really excited to be hosting that. One thing I wanted to mention that I think is real important to the community is this weekend will be our kickoff, and we're starting First Monday back up. And so that's a good community activity. I know a lot of people have missed it the last 3 months, but we're back up and running on First Monday this weekend. So if you're looking for something to do, get out and attend that event. Support our vendors that have been down for the last 3 months. We're glad to get them back in there and helping them make some money. That's a long tradition here, so we're glad to see that running again. But with Spark in the Park, as they said, that'll be on July 4th alongside their event. It'll be a great day of community activity, which is what we're really proud of, is it gets our community back out and enjoying some activities and some family fun. Spark in the Park is going to kick off at 6:30 on July 4th. We're going to kick off with Giovanni and the Hired Guns. Will be our first act up on stage. That'll be our first band playing. That'll be followed by Jack Ingram. Jack Ingram will wrap up sometime around 9:15, 9:30. We'll lead in with the national anthem at that time, and then sometime around darkfall, 9:30, 9:45, we are going to do a 40-minute fireworks show. And I've been told by the firework company today that we have the second largest fireworks show in North Texas, only behind Addison's Boomtown. So we're really excited about what we have to offer this year in our fireworks. So we've stepped it up a little bit, and it's going to be a bigger and better show than we've ever had.
Phenomenal.
So appreciate it.
You know, with social distancing being something that we've had to adapt our lifestyles a little bit, this is always a good opportunity, but this year's Spark in the Park is an opportunity for those who maybe are a little bit more reluctant to be in crowds or maybe more at risk. They're going to be able to see these fireworks from a long ways away. I think you need to be able to be at the street dance on the square and see them. And so this is a great opportunity for our community and our county to enjoy
Just
this.
following on that, you're right. This thing is viewable. The Weatherford College parking lot's a great location. You get out there by the highway on Interstate and that shopping complex. You've got a lot of opportunities to view this show. Something I hadn't mentioned, but it is on our website. You can go to experienceweatherford.com to get more information on it. But Chuck FM, our local radio station, will be playing our soundtrack along with those fireworks. So if you don't want to be on the grounds and you want to hear it somewhere in Parker County, you kick on that radio station, you'll be able to follow right along with everybody at the grounds.
That's great. Thank you for the information.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mayor.
it.
Thanks, Shannon.
Item 6 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. 6A, consider approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting held on June 9th of 2020. The challenge is, Ms. Peacock, because I can't see who's made a motion in a second.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Kevin Clute
Second.
for approval, second by Matt Tiskus. Thank y'all for bailing me out. Any discussion on the minutes before we call for a vote? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote at this time.
Can you see our votes?
Now I can vote. My electronic vote showing?
Got it. I wasn't here.
Correct, okay. The record show Jeff Robinson's recused himself. Is my vote showing electronically, Ms. Peacock? Okay. We have 4 yays and 1 recusal. Item 7 on the agenda is consent agenda items. We have 7A, B, C, and D, council. We can entertain those as a whole. Do we need to split anything off individually? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion on those as a group. Motion provided by Jeff Robinson, second by Heidi Wilder. Any discussion before we call for a vote on 7A, B, C, and D? Hearing none, indicate yea or nay, please. Consent items pass 5-0. Item 8 on the agenda is public hearings. 8A, hold a public hearing and consider approval of ordinance O2020-29 for a conditional use permit for a 3-car garage located at 1001 East Lake Drive, being a .45 acre tract of land described as lots 250 and 251 of the lots surrounding Lake Weatherford. As shown on the plat now on file at City Hall, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, CUP 2020-0002. Welcome and good evening.
Yes, Mayor and Council, you have in your packets the complete staff report that outlines this request for the conditional use permit that went before the Planning Commission. at their June 10th, 2020 meeting, and it was voted unanimously for approval with the 3 conditions as outlined in the report, and as well as the staff recommendation was also a recommendation of approval with those conditions. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Kettner before we have a public hearing? Thank you, sir. If you'll stick around, we're going to have a public hearing at this time on item 8A. We do have one speaker card, but before we call him forward, does anybody like to speak on this item specifically? Public hearing, 8A. Seeing none, Mr. Ted Goosen. Ted? I hope I pronounced your name properly, sir.
You did. Thank you, Mayor.
Once you come to the microphone, if you'd identify yourself by name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Ted Goosen. I live at 1001 East Lake Drive. I'm the applicant for the property. When we bought the property about 1.5 years ago, it had 3 buildings on it, 3 sheds, all mismatched, all different colors, all different shapes. So kind of an eyesore. And for the past 24 years, we've had garages. Now we have a carport. And with the recent rains and the hail that would come with these things, we've decided we want to go back to a garage. And on top of that, these houses were built many, many years ago, and not much storage space in these houses. So the attic of the garage would be very helpful for storage, and I can save, $240 in storage fees in doing so. All right. During the planning commission, they asked about offset setbacks from the road and everything, and it was reported that everything matches and everything. There's no plumbing in this, only electricity, so there's no chance of an apartment overhead in the attic. The attic's going to be too small anyways, you have to be very short. All right. But if you have any questions, I'm available, and we're through the gentleman back of me.
Appreciate you being here tonight. Are there any questions for the applicant?
No, sir.
Thank you for being here tonight, sir. We really appreciate it. Anybody else on 8A, public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing on 8A. Council, any discussion? See a motion on the floor by the Mayor Pro Tem for approval is presented. Second by Jeff Robinson. Any discussion before we call for a vote? Indicate yea or nay, please. Passes 5-0. 8B is to hold a public hearing and consider approval of ordinance 02020-30 for a conditional use permit for a detached accessory garage and dwelling located at 3533 Cliffview Loop, being a .645 acre tract of land defined as Lot 26, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, CUP 2020-0003. Welcome back.
Yes, Mayor and Council, you have before you this request at 3533 Cliffview Loop for this requested detached accessory garage with a conditional use permit. And you have the complete staff report in your packet that went before the Planning Commission at their June 10th, 2020 meeting to construct this detached garage with the, as shown in the packet, there was 6 conditions placed on this as it went before staff, and staff recommended approval with these conditions. And it was recommended unanimously for approval by the Planning Commission with the 6 conditions as listed in your staff report.
Questions for Mr. Kettner before we have a public hearing? Hearing none at this time, we'll have a public hearing on item 8B. Anybody like to speak from the floor? We did one speaker card, but first I'll say, does anybody from the floor want to speak on 8B, public hearing? Seeing none. John Verdier?
Oh, good.
Did I mess it up, John? I got your card late. I didn't have it.
That's like saying Tarjay.
Okay.
So everybody wants to say it that way, but it's just Verdier.
We can have your name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Thanks for your patience.
Yes, sir. John Verdier, live at 3533 Cliffview Loop. We are requesting this so that we can have additional parking space. The majority of our, well, I would say 80% of the neighborhood has 3+ garages in our community neighborhood there, so I need a little bit more to also for myself. Then we have some office space above that for myself. I have a special needs son, so I need to be close to home to help mom, but also far enough away to where I can talk on the phone. We don't intend to use that space for rental at any time. It will be an office space for me, and if anybody needs to come and visit with me, they'll have enough space to have their own little separate area. That's it.
Any questions for the applicant on this item? We sure appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Questions for staff on this, council? Or discussion? Entertain a motion on 8B if that's your pleasure. Motion for approval by the Mayor Pro Tem as recommended by staff.
With the 6 conditions as recommended by staff.
Second by Matt Tiskus. Does that
Likewise.
duplicate, sir? Okay. This time we'll call for a vote on 8B. Indicate yea or nay, please. Passes 5-0. 8C, a public hearing was originally advertised and scheduled to be heard at this meeting for a zoning district change and a general plan amendment for a 42.14 acre tract of land, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, ZCH 2020-007. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on June 10th of 2020 and voted unanimously to table this request to their July 8th meeting at the request of the applicant. City Council will schedule a public hearing for this item following a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission at a subsequent date. Mr. Kettner, any comments on this, sir?
Nope. As stated, there's no action needed on this.
My understanding, Mr. Otop, is I do need to open the public hearing and give a date certain requirement.
That is correct.
Okay. This time, I will open the public hearing on this item with ask for a motion and a second from council to table date certain, July the 28th.
Motion to table till July 28th, 2020.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cleveland, second by Mr. Tiskus. Any discussion on 8C before we take a vote on the table? Hearing none, we'll vote this time. Passes 5-0. Item 8D on the agenda is hold a public hearing and consider approval of ordinance O2020-31 for a zoning district change from AG agricultural to R1 one-family residential located at 1514 East Lake Drive, being a 1.200 acre tract of land defined as lots 108 through 112, Block 1 of the Holiday Hills Addition, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, ZCH 2020-0008.
Mayor, I must recuse myself from any discussion or vote on this. I have a personal interest. I have filed an affidavit as such with the mayor today.
I have received the affidavit for the record, and it will be on file at the city secretary's office. Mr. Kettner, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mayor and Council, you have the complete staff report in your packet. As you may recall, this is a application that for recently annexed land into the city limits here at 1514 East Lake Drive. This did go before the Planning Commission at their June 10th meeting, and staff recommended approval of the rezoning request, and as well as the Planning Commission also recommended approval of this rezoning request. And if you have any questions, be glad to answer any.
We do have an open hearing, or excuse me, public hearing for this item. Any questions for Mr. Kettner before we have the hearing? Thank you, sir. This time we'll have a public hearing on item 8D. I do have one speaker card, but before I call this person forward, anybody like to speak on 8D from the floor? Seeing none? Let's see. Dominic Padarte? Oh, I'm 0 for 2 on these names. I'll have him come ask you, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
If you can have your name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes. I apologize.
I just have more of a question than anything. I live out on East Lake Drive.
Sure.
And there's an easement behind the property. I believe it's just a county access. I was wondering if that would be impacted at all by these properties being annexed.
Yeah, we'd have to defer that to staff for that question. It's not something that council's
Okay.
qualified, but Mr. Kettner and his staff would sure be happy to visit with you about that and
Okay.
make sure that you get your question answered.
Yeah, that'd be
We're glad you came forward. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, not a problem.
Council, any discussion, anybody else from 8D floor, 8D? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing this time on 8D. Council, any discussion or questions? Hearing none, entertain a motion this time. Mr. Robinson has a motion for approval. As presented, Mr. Cleveland, your second complies, sir. Any discussion before we call for a vote on 8D? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote this time. Indicate yea or nay. We do have 4 yeas and 1 recusal, as previously documented and stated. 8E on the agenda is hold a public hearing and consider a request for zoning district change from R1 one-family residential to PD plan development and general plan amendment from SL suburban living to UL urban living on property located at the eastern terminus of Lynn Street and described as being 3.884 acres out of the IC Spence survey, abstract number 1172, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, ZCH 2020-0009. Welcome back, Mr. Kettner.
Mayor and council, you have before you this request that went before the Planning Commission for action in regarding their request for a general plan amendment from suburban living to urban living, as well as a rezoning request from R1, one-family residential, to PD planned development. Staff recommended a denial of the request of the rezoning and of the amendment to the general plan, and at their June 10th, 2020 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended a denial of the applicant's request for zoning and amendments to the general plan. You have the complete staff report in your packet. I believe the applicant is here, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer any.
Any questions for Mr. Kettner before we have, I believe we'll call the applicant forward first and then have our public hearing? Is that satisfactory process, Mr. Hilltop? Okay. Council, any discussion for Mr. Kettner before we do that? Mr. Hooker? Gene? I show him as owner. Is that the applicant?
He's the owner.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Hooker, I'm sorry. I'll get back to you. I apologize. Sir, would you like to come forward? Okay. I apologize, sir.
How y'all doing?
We're doing great. We get your name and address, sir.
Yeah. My name's Colt Cantrell. I'm at 111 Cottonwood Street, just down the road in Weatherford. I guess you've seen the packet. I think we've come up with a good plan for this tract of land. We've put together 3 properties to equal 3.88 acres. That's 2 different owners, Mr. Hooker and then Mr. Morgan out of Granbury. Mr. Morgan owns the most northern lot that abuts the creek. That tract does not have any access to right-of-way other than, I think, a 15-foot drainage easement that is adjacent to 1002 Lynn Street. So we think we've come up with a good plan for this property. There's only one way in, one way out, and what we're looking at is changing the general plan from suburban to urban living. I think it makes sense on this tract. The general plan's a good plan, but it doesn't allow for the development of this property, really. I don't think this is going to develop into $400,000 single-family homes. It's just not feasible at this location. So that's why we're asking to rezone to the planned development that would allow for the duplex use. That was at the staff's request when we started talking back in, I want to say January. Let's see here. This is a project, a little bit about us. We're a family company. This is myself and my 2 brothers. We construct houses. Right now we're working in Keller, building single-family houses there. This is a different deal. Those are $500,000 houses, and we've looked at this tract, and we just can't make the math work on that low density that R1 requires. So we're looking to purchase land, develop it, and build the 28 duplex, or the 28 units. It is our intention to maintain the ownership of them, and we will manage those through an HOA that I'll be the one managing that. So we're going to keep standards high. We'll have park areas on the north end and the south end, walking trails throughout, and the idea is to make this a a nice, clean family place, family neighborhood. It's our plan to go ahead and put a gate on it there at the one entry. These are not going to be cookie cutter homes. We're going to change up the articulation of the buildings, change up colors, so you actually know that, hey, that's my house. You know, they don't all look the same. Let's see. If you look at the property to the west, there are existing duplexes. I've gone through the tax rolls and compared the mailing address to the property address. The adjacent properties to us to the west, let's see, of about 14 homes, only one is owner occupied. And if you go to the east, half of the houses that we're directly adjacent to are owner occupied and the other half are rented. Now that's from going through the Parker County appraisal site and just trying to match up mailing addresses versus property addresses. So the duplexes to the west, you know, they're probably 35 years old. I don't know, you might not drive around there too much, but they're...
I think we're all familiar with it.
Yes, sir. And, you know, the single-family houses to the east, they're nice. They're older, you know, 50-year houses. It's a good area, and we think we can add to it and add to the community. So we have, you know, 28 units. They range from 2 to 4 bedrooms. Let's see. 12 of those units will have attached garages for parking. We have about 2.5 parking places per unit, and we plan on having 2 dumpster enclosures. So you'll take your trash out to the dumpster. We'll keep, you know, trash to a minimum, and that's what we're looking to do. I'm excited about it. I think it's a good plan, but we need to change the general plan to allow for this, and I think it's worth doing.
Any questions for this gentleman before we move on? We appreciate your willingness to be here and share the information that you brought forward, and we appreciate
Anytime.
the research that you've done. Thank you. This time on item 8E, we're going to open a public hearing. The first speaker card I had is Mr. Marvin Adams. Mr. Adams? Welcome tonight, and thank you for your patience. Mr. Adams, we have a number of people with cards tonight. We'd ask if you would respectfully speak 3 minutes or less.
My name is Marvin Adams, 1529 Greenwood Road here in Weatherford. I lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years, and I still own property in the neighborhood. City staff recommends denying this request. The Planning and Zoning Board denied this request, and its minutes state its denial was based upon the proposed density and only one ingress and egress. The following comments were made at the meeting by the Planning and Zoning Board. I listened to the tape and I was there. Chairwoman Rachel Patillo said, "We have been down this path before. We should not change a plan that was well studied. This neighborhood has narrow streets. The traffic would be crazy." Gary Balbaugh stated Lynn Street is not set up for this. It's too narrow and it will not work. There's not enough parking spaces. Allison Baker stated R1 is what makes sense for this neighborhood. This council should honor the integrity and gumption of its staff and the Planning and Zoning Board by denying this request. Mr. Cantrell has brought nothing to you to explain why the city staff is wrong and why the Planning and Zoning Board is wrong and why the neighbors are wrong. The same problems still exist. This is a narrow strip, it slopes severely, it creates drainage issues. One way in and one way out. Increased traffic, particularly on the north end and west sides of the Curtis Cemetery, where the streets cannot be widened. It's dangerous now, it will only get worse. Access to the residents on the south end of the proposed development by fire and other emergency vehicles will be non-existent. The walkway on the south end of the development will encourage visitor parking on Southland Street, which is already crowded. Lighting for the development will turn the whole neighborhood into urban living. How will the streets handle the heavy construction vehicles while the project is being built? Where will the construction workers park? With the number of bedrooms planned under the Texas Property Code, you could have 180 adults in this development. There's not enough parking as it is, much less add that into it. This is a recipe for disaster for this neighborhood. Thank you.
Mr. Adams, thank you for being here, for your patience with us. Next speaker card I have is for Deborah Emanuel. Deborah? How are you this evening? Good. Once you get settled up there, if we can have your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
I am Deborah Emanuel, and I am a future resident of 1121 Rusk Street. And I've been in Weatherford for 10 years, and that's been a super quiet, like secret neighborhood, you know. It's just been very quaint, and that's where I want to move to from I live off of 730. So I'm going to purchase a quiet resident, and I want to keep it that way. So I'm just here to ditto the gentleman prior to me as support.
Ms. Emanuel, we thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And appreciate you coming forward and sharing your thoughts. Cecilia DeLozer. Did I get that one right?
You're just perfect.
I'm 1 for 3. That's not bad, huh?
You're great.
That's better than my batting average ever was.
I'm Cecilia DeLozier. I live at 1211 Boat Ark, where I have resided for 50 years.
We'll give you 3 minutes. Can you agree to that?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I knew you would. Thank you.
And I want to talk to you about this disaster. I am a certified safety engineer as well as an environmental engineer and a registered nurse, and I'm severely concerned about the quality of life and the personal safety of the residents of this area, as well as our students from Weatherford College. They use this street for their athletic activities. The homes on my street have, the one across the street has been recently remodeled, and the ones on both sides of me have been remodeled. They're beautiful homes. We do have some renters. Down on Lynn Street, he's talking about the people in the duplexes. Many of those own their own homes. They're single-family homes. That's a mixed residence area, not just duplexes. If you add this, and we have 70 cars coming and going, or in that area, we're going to have more wrecks. We had a wreck there not too long ago at Boat Ark in Southland with a city dump truck and a nice little lady who ran into the side of it. So we have more traffic than we can handle now. I'm requesting a stop sign at that corner from the city. We want to live in a nice quality area. I think that's where I've been living, and I want to live there till I die, and then my children get my home. So my parents have both graduated from Weatherford High School. My grandparents were both here. I'm a long-time Parker County Weatherford gal. So we want to keep it there. I've never been here before. I've never felt the desire or need to come because of anything, but I'm very passionate about my neighborhood and my neighbors.
This is here for you to do exactly what you did, and we're glad you had the courage to come forward.
Thank you.
Next speaker card is Karen Serta. Karen. Welcome, and if we can have your name and address, then we'll give you 3 minutes.
Sure.
Thank
Karen
you, Karen.
Serta, 1210 South Mill Street. I'm actually Miss DeLozier's neighbor, and her and I have teamed up when we heard about this. She's done a lot of hard work, so thank you, Cecilia. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is we hit the streets when we heard about this, and we formed a petition to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council to deny this request, and that petition has 64 signatures. anyone who would open the door for us signed this and said that is not a good idea for this neighborhood. Whether you're on the west side in the duplex, the majority duplex community, or you're on the east side of the Roselawn subdivision, everyone feels this is dangerous due to traffic flow. It's reducing the property values of our homes due to traffic flow, cars. It's no longer, it takes the things that we have worked hard to purchase, our homes, and devalues them and makes them unattractive, no longer a family-friendly neighborhood due to mainly traffic. I have kids myself. My backyard is on Bodark Street, which is one of the main accesses to this property. And there are cars up and down it every day, all throughout the day already. You add 70-plus cars onto that, and it is not a good situation. So we ask that you deny this just from the standpoint of traffic and parking. Mr. Adams already stated a whole bunch of things. One other thing that hasn't been mentioned is this is an Austin-zoned, Austin Elementary School District. That school is no longer accepting transfers because it's already at capacity. This is a lot of people. We're talking about family-friendly. There's an expectation that children will live in this. Does the school system even have room for that many children? The bus situation is already dangerous for the pickup at that location. You had a whole lot more children standing on that blind curve corner. Recipe for disaster. Again, not a good situation. I don't want to beat a dead horse here and bore you guys, but that's my opinion.
And we're glad you came forward to share it. Thank you so much, Ms. Serta. Mr. Hooker, I apologize. Now, can you come back up, sir? Once you get settled, Mr. Hooker, if we can have your name for the record and your address, and then we'll give you 3 minutes.
Gene Hooker.
If you'll just wait till you get up here, we can have it on the record. Thank you.
Name's Gene Hooker. I live at 108 East Lake Drive in Weatherford.
Okay.
I'm the owner of this property along with my wife, and I just would like to give a little bit of a history of this particular lot. This lot is in its original form since as far back as I can tell, which is the 1950s. There was construction building these homes initially, I think, in the late 1950s or the early 1960s, and there was a couple that lived on the south end of this property, and that was their homestead there. They kept that and that land because they didn't want anybody to build on it, kind of similar to what we're going through here. They eventually got elderly, and my father-in-law, who lived in the area, bought about half of their property. There was about 4 acres there, and he bought about 2 of them because they could not maintain it. And then he maintained it for about the next 15 years. And then eventually they sold him another parcel of land that gave away all their land except for just their house. And he maintained it until he no longer could take care of it. And so I purchased it from him in 2001. So I've owned it for about 20 years. And again, that lot still looks exactly like it did in the 1950s. Nobody has ever utilized it for anything. And now I'm getting to that point to where I can no longer manage to take care of it. I have paid taxes on it for 20 years. I pay to have it mowed. I pick up the trash that gathers there. Some of this, and not everybody, but a few of the people that live adjacent to it tend to use the back fence as a place to throw their cans and bottles. So I pick those up. Excuse me, occasionally it'll get dumped. I have found a few mattresses out there over a period of time, and dead animals. I don't know if people dump the dead animals there or not, but they're, either that or we had 3 deer that passed away at the same time out here a couple of months ago. But what I'd like to say is, I need to do something with this piece of property. It's been for sale for several years, so anybody is available to buy it. Nobody has made a personal interest in it, these people that live around it. But I have had numerous ideas of what to do with this piece of property. None of them compare at all as to what Mr. Cantrell is proposing. Most of it, for the people that are familiar with this area, would not be houses or new houses that look similar to the ones on the east side of the property. They will look more like the houses on the west side of the property. So And I'll have to develop this some way, and if they want to reject this plan, I'm going to have to fall back to some other plans that I have shied away from now for 3 years, because I just didn't want that property used like that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for your patience and for being here tonight, Mr. Rucker. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I don't have any more blue cards on this item on 8E. Is there anybody from the floor that would like to speak at this time? It's a public hearing. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing on 8E. Council, discussion. Mr. Kettner can come back up and answer our questions or help guide us a little bit. Talk among ourselves.
I listened to the planning and development discussion. I actually drove and viewed the property myself. I agree. As hard as this is to deny, I agree that we should not change the general plan, and we should follow the planning and zoning's suggestion of denial.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And anybody else?
I kind of walked down the same road Heidi did, watched P&Z more than once, went and looked at the area. Thank for the elevations and stuff. I think it's a nice product you're bringing, but I just don't think this particular piece is the place for that product. So I would have a hard time overturning P&Z and staff's recommendation.
I'm going to agree that I would have a hard time overturning planning and zoning, and there's very valid arguments that have been brought up. But I want to talk just a little bit on the other side of this too. I'm sympathetic to the gentleman that owns it, because I'm fearful that the community has grown up with this nice piece of undeveloped property that they've come accustomed to and may not be happy with any type of development. I know if I lived there and it had something like that behind my home for 20 years, I probably wouldn't want anything to go in there. And so I think we have to keep, it in mind that the gentleman that owns it has the, right to sell it and develop the property. So we may want to, as a city, meet with him and kind of determine some things that would fit and see where we maybe could be helpful with finding something that would work for the gentleman that owns it, that would also work well with the neighbors. So if we might could come up with some suggestions.
Well stated. Mr. Tiskus, comments? Thoughts?
Mr. Kettner, would you just describe for us more why staff recommended against approval?
One of the major concerns we had was the general plan. The general plan was adopted in 2018, and when we looked at the neighborhood and the existing neighborhood, we felt that this was an area that was well studied in the general plan, and in this particular case, this is a unique shaped piece of lot, uniquely shaped in that area, and the general plan really, it doesn't really fit in that category with the density, even though it is a great product that we've seen there. It's just for the area, it may not be the best fit according to the general plan that was adopted in 2018. And without that, it doesn't make it possible for us to really give a positive recommendation on the rezoning.
Yeah, I think the general plan is important. I think there probably is some flexibility with the plan. I mean, it's a plan. All plans are meant to be flexible. And as Mr. Robinson stated, definitely sympathetic to the property owner and feeling like, they own the property, they have the opportunity to develop it. But we've developed the plans and the general plan, and we agreed on this for a reason. We felt that it was important in our community, and planning and zoning has an important part to play. And I think for us to move counter to their recommendation, we wouldn't take that lightly. I know we wouldn't, but I don't think I would support going against their recommendation.
If I could add one more thing. This seems to kind of be a buffer between the single family and the multifamily housing there. And the product that we're looking at really kind of seems like something that's middle of the road that puts the two of them together. We just don't overcome access and streets and such in the area to get there. And that's why I thought maybe, there's, staff might have some recommendations to help something a little different that would work.
Yeah, I think as we've had discussions with the applicants on that, some of those discussions, one of the concerns when you look at the general plan and the aspects of that is the density issue and concerns that have been brought that you've heard in the hearing and the Planning Commission has heard. And so we'll be glad to meet with them and discuss options with them.
One more question. I mean, looking at this, is there room to put another residential street and put single-family houses on it?
It's very precarious in its size. In order to meet the minimum size requirements, it makes it very difficult to do that. It's possible to fit some homes in there, just maybe not to the density that is being requested.
Okay.
My thoughts on this item was at the Planning and Zoning meeting and have studied this area in depth. The density, the change in the general plan is significant to me. The density for the ingress and egress limitations is, there's no ability to overcome that in the current format. A lot of cars, a lot of people. My primary concern with ingress and egress, other than the children in the neighborhood and the things that everybody stated, is, I believe Mr. Adams stated this, is the public safety ingress and egress. I don't like one way in and out of anything that has this many units. In the world we live in, the least we can do is offer multiple ways in and out. In saying that, I also side with Mr. Robinson a little bit, that what the community members in this area need to understand is that these property owners have the right to develop this property, and it will happen. And so it is for sale, and if you're dead set on it not being developed, I would pull my money and I would buy it, because this gentleman is in the mode where he wants to get rid of the property. He does have the right, if it falls under our standards, to develop that. And so I would expect that that's something that would come forward at a later date if it's denied tonight. So I see both sides. As it's presented tonight, I just can't get my arms around it. Questions or comments on this side?
No, I will back up. I don't like for us to lean, so general plan is always one of those things that I kind of smile when depending on what the topic is, sometimes it seems like you push really hard, or we don't want to change a plan that's already pushed, and then sometimes you lean on the side of, well, it's a plan that's supposed to be a living document. So for me, the plan is a guideline, but there's so many things around it that fit, and you spoke to density, and we've had a lot of conversations in the last 6-8 months over density and lot sizes, and we're pushing some lot sizes in corner lots to kind of grow and give us a little more space, and that seems to be the direction the citizens are pushing it. It seems to be kind of the direction we're headed, and I think this particular product in this spot just creates too much and too little of a space with not the access that would be needed for this type of facility. So I think y'all's points are spot on. But
And my final comment on this is that I appreciate all the community input. I think council does. That's what our system's built on. The opportunity for an applicant to come in and citizens and rationally and constructively have a debate, if you will, or different positions. It's healthy, and I think we love to see this. But on the other hand, I want the citizens to know that this is not a conditioned response to your attendance here. You came with factual information, you were rational, you were constructive, you were fair, but there is going to be a point in time where all of you can show up, and the project's just going to work because it's going to fit there. And so at that point, you're going to need to work with those developers or that property owner, and y'all work as a team, because eventually you're going to be a community with the people that live inside this property. So as this transitions down the road, y'all work constructively and productively like you had with the staff and the council with that developer to make something that blends and enhances your community and doesn't become adversarial. So,
and that goes along with building a strong community, which we talk about a lot as a city, and we want to continue to develop in our citizens and property owners and developers. We want to build that strong community all around. So,
any other comments on 8E? Questions for Mr. Kettner? Ms. Peacock, can I verify that I did close the public hearing? Okay, just making sure. A lot going on here. Council, we entertain a motion, if it's your pleasure, on 8E, unless there's other discussion.
motion to deny.
Second.
Motion denied by Councilman Cleveland. There's a second for denial by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder.
Could we expound, that's a motion to deny both?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Cleveland, just for the record, can you state that?
Deny both the change to general plan and zoning.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, is your second correlate directly? All righty, just want to get that straight on the record. Any discussion on AD before we call for a vote? Yay or nay? A yay is for denial. Denial passes 5-0. Item 9 on the agenda is regular agenda items. 9A, consider request for final plat approval for Silverstone at Pearson Ranch, Phase 9, 79 residential lots, being 30.12 acre tract of land situated in the T&P Railroad Company survey and a portion of the Parker Pearson LP tract, City of Weatherford, Parker County, Texas, SBD 2020-0017. Welcome back. Last dance for tonight, right?
Yes. Mayor and council, you have before you this final plat request for the Silverstone at Pearson Ranch, Phase 9, the 79 lot residential lot. There were 4 conditions remaining on this that were placed on it by the Planning Commission in their recommendation of approval, 5-0 at their meeting, and with meeting those 4 conditions, as well as staff's recommendation to approve with those 4 conditions. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer any.
Questions on 9A for staff? It's final plat. Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion at this time. It's your pleasure.
Make a motion to approve with the 4 recommended conditions on the agenda report.
I second if Gary Balball approves.
Motion on the floor as stated. Mr. Tiskus, your second.
Yes.
Directly correlates. Any discussion on 9A before we call for a vote?
We'll say Gary did give a pretty good speech prior to this one.
Call for a vote this time. 9A. Indicate yea or nay, please. Passes 5-0. Item 10, staff reports. 10A, update regarding progress of the downtown bypass project. Mr. Terry Hughes, welcome, sir. Thanks for your patience with us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Terry Hughes, Capital Projects. Thanks for the time you're allowing me to give you this brief update. I won't take too much of your time. Again, this is the downtown bypass program. The first 3 slides that you're fixing to see, you've seen before, except for you, Mr. Tiskus. You haven't, but I understand you.
Oh, I saw him. I watched him online, so I saw him.
I'm a celebrity now on television for that. But, no. First of all, wow, got way too excited. First of all, the map of the bypass program. That's what you see here. We have a 3-phase program, what we refer to as the northern bypass, which is in green and yellow. Phase 2 is the south bypass, which is in cyan, and phase 3 is Heritage Square, which is magenta in color. Just wanted to kind of show you those. This is the timeline that you saw in the February presentation I made. Again, I want to refer you to the red arrow off to the left. We shifted our start timeline about 8 months, predicated on some negotiations, on some discussions we had with NetCog about some additional funding, some cash infusion that we didn't have or couldn't come up with. They actually brought that money forward. So in order to do that, it had to go through the TIP modification, or the Transportation Improvement Program modification. All of that has been approved by COG and forwarded to TxDOT. We anticipate that approval in October, which would allow us to get to or access funds. That's what all of that is showing you. This is, again, a timeline based on us being able to access funds in November of 2020. After those approvals are made, you see this timeline. None of this has changed. There's not been a lot of activity that would change any of this, other than we've moved that TERS adoption off, and I'll explain the reason why we've done that in a moment. The schematic designs, all of those stay the same. If anybody asks you, that's the program we're working on at this time. Now, just to give you some background information, bring you up to date, the North Bypass budget, which is going through the TIP which will be approved, is set at $16,590,000. Those are the funds that will be available to us in November. The southern bypass, and I'll parenthesis the budget, is around $9,416,000, and those are still in negotiations or in discussions with COG trying to finalize that. We have a verbal commitment that those will be funded, but we don't have a signed commitment that we can actually take to the bank, so to speak. So we've kind of left that set out there. I do want you to know that both phases of this will have a local funding component, which will be underwritten by the TERS number 2 program for at least 20 years of the TERS 2 program. Again, those TERS programs are 30 years in length, so there is an underwriting element to this. So what has happened since our last meeting? We changed the federal function and classification of the roadways around, or the bypass roadways. This seems trivial sometimes when you talk about it, but when you're talking about federal funding, if they're not classified correctly, you don't get those funds. So this is actually a substantial movement on the part of the feds. We've also had a project initiation meeting with TxDOT to start designing or talking about the parameters of what their involvement will be and our involvement will be as we finalize the advanced funding agreement. We've held meetings with North Central Texas Council of Governments concerning the TERS revenue analysis for what we refer to as an ILA, or an interlocal agreement. That is actually the agreement on how our TERS will interact with repayment of the funds to them, or some of the funds to them, not all of them, some of them are grants. So upcoming actions that will need to happen as we move toward that target date in November. We want to finalize the interlocal agreement, or the ILA, which stipulates the repayment plan based on our TERS program. At that point, we can finalize our TERS project plan. When we established the TERS, which was put out there originally to be the underwriting element for this, there was a preliminary project plan in place which was very vague in nature. It listed the downtown program, but it listed some other things and other elements and didn't have a lot of meat associated with it. We need to finalize that plan. We will not finalize that plan until we have this ILA firmed up and signed, or firmed up to the point we can sign everything, and then that will be attached to the final project plan. Other things that our staff is doing, there's 2 of us in our department. We are working on finalizing the advanced funding agreement, again, which stipulates everything that each entity will be doing. We're also trying to qualify what is needed by TxDOT for what we refer to as a request for qualifications for our engineering firm. We want all these elements in place as our funds become available in November. So we're trying to get all of that out of the way so that come November, we can kind of hit the ground running and start our survey work and some other elements. That being said, see if I can get back. It won't let me get back. The overall game is to get all of the roadways done, out of the way, so we can, again, address the downtown square issue. And I will try to answer any questions you might have at this point.
Questions from Mr. Hughes? Council?
So I'll start with, so the October, November date still hadn't moved. The dates are all pretty much consistent, so you have the funding coming in November. So as we're working through, I had 3 things I wrote down, was how to go from verbal to an actual signed contract, and then a TxDOT project meeting, question mark on when that date was, and then the ILA agreement. Those are all tied together, so that ILA agreement is when the verbal becomes permanent, I'm assuming, correct?
The ILA agreement has to do with phase 1. Correct. We are still looking for, we don't feel like, put this in a way, moving forward with phase 1, not having a commitment with phase 2 is kind of silly. We need that money. We've got that verbal, but we don't have it in the TIP development process with COG. They go through a process where they pull money out of various categories and say, that's what we will use to fund. They haven't started that process yet. Once I see that process in place and moving forward, we are comfortable then that those funds will come to us. It may be a couple of years down the road before they become available, but they're in that process. And at this point, they are not in that process.
So, go ahead.
We just have that verbal, yeah, we will do it, and you know how that works sometimes.
So I guess my question is, phase one, we've discussed, is funded, but we don't have a contract for phase one. We don't have an agreement that says the money is ours, and the money won't be released till November, correct?
You have the TIP modification that was approved by the Regional Transportation Council. They are the funding element. All that remains is a final approval by the Highway Commission, and those are mainly just formalities.
And so when is that meeting that approves?
It's in October.
It's in October.
That's why we've established November as our ability to get the funds.
So phase two will not change the date. So waiting on phase two funding, which I agree we need to make sure we have in the hopper, because phase one is pretty pointless without phase two and continuing on through. Phase one funding will not be affected in any way, form, or fashion, timeline-wise, by phase two's money.
That is correct.
Okay. So,
and let me say that we also have negotiated, while I'm very comfortable, confident that all of this will come into being, because part of our interlocal agreement includes some fronting of money to do the design for the southern bypass, if that makes sense. That's part of that ILA. So we're getting $1 million up front to do the design work and get everything in place. We just don't have the commitment to buy the right-of-way and do the construction.
okay. So in October at that meeting, is it as simple as them looking at an agreement that's already been put together and just putting their stamp of approval on the agreement?
It's not just a single agreement. It's normally about 2,000 or 3,000 agreements. It's in a book this big. I doubt seriously if anybody at the Highway Commission even reads every one of them. They just look to their staff and say, is this okay? And it's approved by them.
But we do have that agreement already in place, already written, ready submitted?
It's through RTC and on its way to the Highway Commission for approval.
Okay. So you don't see any road bumps between now and November for phase one at all?
The only road bump would be not being able to finalize the ILA or the interlocal agreement. We have forwarded the interlocal agreement with all the elements along with our analysis, our TERS analysis, to COG for them to say, yeah, we agree to these terms, we agree to this, and send it back to us. That's the only thing that could possibly hold it up.
Okay.
Can I ask a question real quick on what you just said? Do you see any funding problem with the way that we design TERS 2? Because TERS 2 is designed in such a manner that it is pay-as-you-go funding. Do you see any glitch with that when you're going to do the ILA?
Me personally, no, I do not see a glitch, and I'm going to use some terms that are in the ILA. In fact, some of the terms in it state that every year you look at your revenues that have come in, and remember, our TERSs are set up so that as the increment goes up, 50% of that goes into a TERS fund. Not all of it, but just 50%. The way the ILA is written, it says, each year you look at that, and if you receive any funds in that, a percentage of that would go to repay them part of this money. If we don't receive any increment, or the increment is small, it's just a percentage of that small amount, if you understand where I'm going with that. So the people on the hook in the long run for this is North Central Texas Council of Governments. If the economy goes down, our payment would go down. If it goes up, obviously our payment would go up. So that kind of floats in space. I don't see any real problem with it. We've vetted it through Brad, and we've vetted it through Mr. Petty. Obviously, James and myself have gone through it several times, so.
Questions, other questions, comments?
I got a few still. So, on the funding, and I'm just trying, so if they were to go through the ILA and find something that they didn't like in it and wanted to renegotiate that, what is that time? Is there any is there time in the negotiation? Are we set up by meetings between now and October that they would have to negotiate, or is the negotiating happening outside of meetings through staff interaction?
It's staff interaction. Okay. This is still going to go to, the tip modification, or that $16 million is still going to Austin. It will still be approved by Austin. Anything that undermined it would just be in these negotiations with the ILA.
And the only reason I keep bringing it up is because I look at that as the diamond in the green that starts it, is the funding. And if we don't make the date on the funding, we don't make the date on anything that follows it. Obviously, we all know that. So I just want to make sure that I don't want us to be negotiating all the way up to the meeting. I'd like to make sure that we're in plenty of time that by the time the meeting's set, we're where we need to be.
Mr. Cleveland, I agree. I understand your concerns. Everything is right now in NetCog's court. All of our analysis, everything that we've put together, what the terms that we feel we're comfortable with, and we've had some verbal discussions with them. We've actually had some WebEx meetings with them that weren't necessarily comfortable. We've had some very candid discussions with them. So that's about the only way I can answer that at this point.
So change gears a little bit on the same of course, downtown bypass focus, but a little different piece of it. We've talked a lot about engineering funding and all that stuff, but we've kind of haven't had an update in a while on the actual turnback program, which was another piece of this. I know we had discussed in the past that as soon as the state got 51 redone and Fort Worth Highway and stuff redone, that we were going to move into some of that turnback program. What does the turnback program timeline look like overlapping with this, or is that?
We have put the turnback program kind of on hold, and let me tell you why.
Hold on just a minute, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Zellers, are we okay to overlap here because the turnback's not mentioned on the agenda? Okay, just clarifying. Sorry, sir.
Okay, no problem. The turnback is kind of on hold right now because the bypass itself is federal dollars that hit federal roadways or state roadways. They can't spend those dollars on something that is not on system. That's why you just saw us change the classification and everything. So with regard to when we receive or will get the roads back, it will not happen, at least on a major plan, until after that bypass is complete.
Okay, so
now, one of the unique things about it is when we reclassified the roads on the loop, we declassified the roads inside that loop and took them off their classification, which gives us an opportunity maybe to take control of those. I'm not saying we can immediately, but maybe take control of those at an earlier time frame.
Okay, so turnback is still a conversation. It's just contingent on that actual construction. So timeline moves off till 2023, 2024, somewhere.
That would be correct, yes, sir.
Oh.
Other questions?
Is there anything that we can do to ensure the timeline moves forward and stays on target? Do you see any roadblocks is there anything we can combine or do to ensure that we're going to meet our timeline? Because we've been talking about this a very, very long time, and it seems like the state is slower than molasses. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that there's nothing else we can do in conjunction with something, or I want to make sure we can hit our target.
I think that's the expectation from council. So,
we, from Weatherford and from the staff side, we're doing everything we can to stay on those targets. Those targets have moved, I agree. partially because we did some routing changes, which changed some timeframes, partially because we did some additional things to secure some more money, but we're kind of locked in space and time right now. And I don't know what you as council could do to ensure that, other than work with staff.
I think, until we have an ILA, we don't have a deal. Because until we have an ILA, we don't get a check. And so, from this chair, the concerns are the cost of everything in life goes up by the month. And the original estimates that we used on this, I hope they're still sufficient moving forward. And the second thing is that with the COVID pandemic, there's going to be less money than ever. And so by the day, I think the risk is greater and greater of us hitting a roadblock. And I'm not going to tell you I'm disappointed today, but I will be if we don't have an agreement in November. And we'll look for a quarterly update again with a confirmation that we're still on pace for November. And whatever we have to overcome, we have to overcome. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Hilltop, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, couldn't get it to work there. No, nothing to add. I mean, there has been a lot of discussion with COG, but, we'll continue to push them every way possible to get this resolved. And obviously, it's the most important thing Terry Hughes is working on, so.
Great. Mr. Hughes, thank you for your presentation. Have you ever had one of these around your neck? Been married 23 years. I've been there many times. Thank you for coming forward tonight, sir. Appreciate it, and we'll see you in 3 months.
Sir.
Item 11 is future agenda items. Council, anything?
I got nothing.
Mr. Hilltop, staff.
I have none.
Item 12 is citizen comments on non-agenda items. We do have one blue speaker card from Mr. Chris Denton. Chris, you still with us this evening?
I believe he left, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Chris Denton. Okay, for the record, was not here.
I can paraphrase. He wanted to let us know we did a great job.
Let's see here. Anybody from the floor for non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll go to item 13 on the agenda, which is adjournment. Motion on the floor by Mr. Tiskus for adjournment, second by Mayor Pro Tem Wilder. Any discussion before we call for a vote? Indicate yea or nay, please. We're adjourned at 7:51, 5-0. Thank you very much, council.